Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to chat about another vehicle that I spaded during the event, and this one is the F-5E. The F-5E is one of those I've been told for many years to play, just because it's pretty fun. And if I'm honest with you, it is. It's a super simple plane to use, and also got access to some features recently, just making it that little bit better and also easier to use. And I'm incredibly surprised that this thing is at 10.7. I understand that it's limited when it comes to certain weaponry options, but the feeling of the plane, I feel like I can face stuff which is even like 11.3, even 11.7, and come out on top pretty easily because of the fact that it's super maneuverable and also has some pretty nice guns. The F-5E is very much a light fighter, and at 10.7, it sits at a BR which is kind of a catchment BR. A lot of vehicles get caught up in 10.7, and the highest you're really going to go if you actually get up to it is 11.3, where there is a metric ton of stuff like F4Ss just bombing bases, and doing that especially for the event. The F-5E is kind of the king of its bracket, even though it doesn't have the craziest weaponry. You only get access to 2 Sidewinders and also 2 20mm M39A3s. But the M39A3s are incredibly good 20mm to use, and also the 2 Sidewinders, the AIM-9Js, which are the main one that you get, are good enough to be able to either slow down targets or pick off targets of opportunity, which is very important. And since the vehicle itself is at a BR which doesn't really get up to too much, it usually faces a lot of 10.0, 10.3, 10.7, and also 11.0, which it does really, really well at. And the reason is because it has 2 very powerful engines for how light the airframe is, so your low-end acceleration is really nice, meaning that your turning capabilities are really good, and also means that an enemy finds it very hard to get away from you. Even when I was stock in the F-5E, I realized that this vehicle was able to accelerate a lot faster than many other vehicles, just because of how small it is and the power-to-weight ratio of the vehicle itself. It has enough countermeasures to be able to stop pretty much anything that's coming in. The RWR on the vehicle itself is another thing that got massively kind of boosted, I suppose, recently, since it has the band E to J on it, which means that it can see pretty much all the stuff that comes at you from a semi-active point of view. And since at this BR not a ton of people use semi-actives really well, there's only a few vehicles, like Russian vehicles, that are around here that, use them okay, it actually works very well. The radar on this thing is pretty useless, but one thing it does actually get access to is it does get access to the gun aimer. So if you lock onto a target, you can actually get the adjusted gun sight, which is super useful in certain areas. I would say when chasing a target it's useful, but everywhere else, because you are very maneuverable, the actual aimer will just fly all over the place and be a little bit harder to use. But I'm sure people who are more accustomed to using it will, of course, do it a lot better than I did, which, I didn't really do it too well. So from a stock point of view, the vehicle gets access to 2 AIM-9Es. These I mainly use just to slow down targets and then kill them with the 20mm. The 20mm on this vehicle, very high velocity, very high fire rates. I know a lot of people do focus on the Vulcan, because of course the Vulcan itself is a very good gun, but stuff like the 20mm on things like the F-8U and then also the F-5E are really good as well. They're able to put a ton of damage out at good velocity and be able to take out a lot of targets. The F-5E also has a ton of modifications, and a lot of them don't really or aren't really needed. So for example, the flight performance ones are super useful. The flare and chaff one, I suppose, if you're worried about semi-actives, but mostly it's okay. The main reason to get the countermeasure modification is because it's linked to the AIM-9J for some reason. So you need to get the countermeasure mod before you get the AIM-9J. But the vast majority of the modifications on this are pretty useless in realistic. Since I play a realistic in a superiority fighter, you only need maybe a third or a quarter of the modifications to actually be fully combat effective in the vehicle, which is just nuts. Obviously, G-Suit prioritized. The new 20mm cannons I would probably prioritize too, just because of the fact that you want your guns to be as accurate as possible, since they're going to be your main killer with this thing. Engine and cover, of course, and then also the AIM-9J. You don't need any of the secondary ordnance on it because you'll just never use it, because you're supposed to use this as kind of a, as I said, an air domination fighter, and you can do. It does have a 30mm gun pod that I used a little bit, which was quite fun. Worked out pretty well, but also wouldn't recommend it if you're just trying to generally grind this thing. You want to try and keep this machine as light as possible, so all of these like extra ideas, such as like the Mavericks, the bombs, the rockets, and the gun pod, you want to try and stay away from. If you want to use those in ground, go ahead and use them in ground, but in air, you just want to be as light as possible as you go around the place. So one of the big things that's a huge nicety about this is you can pull it as hard as you want and it's not going to fall apart. Even with, the G-Suit unlocked, even with a max crew, basically you can just chuck this around like a toy plane, and the only thing you got to worry about is the overload knocking out your pilot and not the plane falling apart. As somebody who's also recently been playing the F-5E, it is really annoying when you're, in a fight and then you do a slight turn and you lose some speed and the elevator then kicks in more and then your wing falls off. It's not very enjoyable. The F-5E doesn't have this issue. It is a machine that is super easy to fly. Probably one of the easiest I have flown in recent times, and that is kind of shown through the stats, of this vehicle. It's just another one which is just very easy to fly in the American tech tree. I won 113 air kills to 20 deaths. That's from stock to spaded, and a 62% win rate. While most of the matches that I was actually in were matches which were straight up America versus America, because of the fact that America is so dominant at this BR. It is nuts that you hardly see anything else. In a massive up tier, I didn't really have any issues. You just have to make sure to put your head on a swivel and make sure that if people get behind you, you can outturn them, you can outmaneuver them, you can, use your combat flaps and also your air brake to lose speed, and then also, accelerate super quickly. The only vehicles I would say that can outturn you after a few turns are some of the Delta Wing aircraft, but even then they lose so much energy in a turn, and since you are able to accelerate a lot faster than them at low speeds, you can just burn them and then extend and then do it again, and there you go. You have a wonderful time. If you haven't played this vehicle and you like gunfighting in jets, you have to give it a go. It's super fun to play, really easy, and definitely should go up in BR. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank Schnitzel Stroker, Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Carrion Crow, Nicholas Richardson, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, B. Young, Opium Prime, Masonocrat, Lafouche, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.